was made from the roommate's call, or phone, excuse me, and we're not going to divulge who made that call.
So they came here together. They eventually get into the same apartment together.
Is this your place?
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why we're here?
And I assume noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the end, they died together.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson in for Ted Rowlands alongside Julia Janae. Thanks for being with us. We are going to turn our attention right now to developing news out of the state of Pennsylvania, where a judge in the college murders case is expected to make a major ruling about testimony from key witnesses in that case.
Yeah, this comes after two friends who found the victims' bodies are speaking out for the first time. Let's listen to them speaking on Good Morning America earlier today.
In the documentary, you tell the story of really not feeling alarmed when Dylan called you.
I joked around with her on the phone. You know, it's something you would never expect.
It's November, so I had shorts on, slides on. Like, I wasn't prepared to obviously stay there. I was just going over to check, see what's going on. I would say as soon as you get there, you know something's wrong.
And as we're seeing this new information come out from those witnesses, this morning other potential witnesses appeared at a hearing in Pennsylvania to determine if there is cause for them to be compelled to travel and testify at Kohberger's upcoming trial in August. Bryan Kohberger is accused of killing those 4 University of Idaho students back in November of 2022. And just last week, the judge denied the defense from bringing up alternate suspects as a theory at trial. He also denied a delay in this trial.
Major rulings in that case. Let's do this. Let's head down to the ground. Joining us live with the latest is Court TV Senior Director of Courtroom Coverage, Grace Wong. Grace, you were in that courtroom this morning. You're in the law library right now. What can you tell us about the hearing and the witnesses who were present?
Hi, Matt and Julia. So this hearing, Judge Hippler presides over the Idaho case against Bryan Kohberger. Now, 6 of these witnesses have been subpoenaed, and they reside in Pennsylvania. Now, the Idaho judge has no jurisdiction in Pennsylvania, so in order for them to be able to be called as witnesses in Idaho, he has to have a Pennsylvania judge order these witnesses to appear. And of these witnesses that were subpoenaed, 3 of them expressed concern and objection about going to Idaho, and they were able to, and they have a right to a hearing. They have a right to be heard. The judge did take their testimony, and so we heard from 3 of those witnesses today about why they did not want to testify.
Talk about those witnesses one by one, because there were several subpoenas that went out. I think a couple were actually continued to a later hearing, but the ones that we heard about today, can you talk about why they're even important to the defense's case, starting with Brandon Andreola?
Brandon Andreola was in high school with Bryan Kohberger, and he wanted the subpoena quashed because he thinks that his relationship with Bryan since high school has been minimal and distant. And his last significant contact with Bryan was in June of 2020, some years before this all happened. And more importantly, he's very concerned about the blowback that this will cause to him and his family. Namely that what he said was that the sisters of Bryan Kohberger have already suffered some fallout. They have lost their jobs, and he is the sole income earner for his family. He has a child and a wife, a stay-at-home mom, and they accompanied him to the courtroom today, and his child is very young. His child is maybe 6 months old, and he said that as the sole income earner, if he should lose his job, that would put him in dire straits. So he really doesn't want to testify, and he was very persistent. Like, even after the judge ruled that he has to appear in Idaho, he persisted to explain that he had already given evidence, as much evidence as he could, and he didn't think he had anything more to add to the case, and wanted to know if he could reduce the subpoena to perhaps appearing via Zoom. Of course, the judge said that is going to be up to Judge Hippler to decide, and he couldn't make that decision for Judge Hippler. So that is going to be a decision, or that is going to be a situation that has to be discussed between the defense and the judge and himself. But so far, his appeal to this judge not to testify in the court has been overruled.
So he's going to have to be there.
Denied.
Now it's just going to be a matter of will he appear via Zoom or in person. Again, there's 3 people that were there today at the hearing that you were at. And another person was Jesse Harris. And I understand that he is a boxing coach.
That's right. And he owns a small business, a small construction business, and a gym. And this is the connection to Bryan Kohberger. He coached Bryan when he was 15 or 16 at his gym. And what he had to say was he didn't feel that he didn't know Bryan as a man. He knew him as a teenager. And his gym is, you know, his parents brought their children to his gym when they failed to make the football team or the basketball team. And so he felt his purpose was to help train these students to, in Bryan's case, he said he wasn't there to become a boxer. He never threw a punch, and that he was there to lose weight and to get into better shape and gain confidence. And the other thing that he mentioned was that he didn't want to be perceived as advocating for one side or another. He said he felt for both families, and told the judge that having to go to Idaho to testify in person would be a hardship. And of course, one of the prongs of this hearing is to determine whether testifying in person in Idaho would cause undue hardship to the witness. And he explained that his wife has tumors and is being treated potentially for cancer. They still have to make that determination. And the judge so far is not, he has ordered Jesse to appear, but has reserved jurisdiction in case this medical situation that he described turns into something that would prevent him from going. So, so far he will have to appear, but I think that could be subject to change depending on the condition of his wife.
You know, it's really interesting to think about how this is playing out in terms of the defense asking for witnesses to come who don't want to come. And I think, Grace, you may have earlier mentioned that this is about the penalty phase. This could potentially be character witnesses. And if these are the witnesses that they are grasping for who may be outside the bounds of the inner circle of Bryan Kohberger, just as fascinating that there is this fight going on in the courtroom. Tell us about the last person that you heard about today, Ralph Vecchio.
Ralph Vecchio III is a witness who said he had not seen or heard or had any personal contact with the accused, meaning Bryan Kohberger. But in further questioning of him, we learned that his father owned Colonial, which is the car dealership that sold the Kohberger family the white Hyundai Elantra. And I think what's important about his case, or at least what the defense is trying to advance, is that there was no effort to sell the car after the incident. And so that might be a fact or some testimony that the defense might want to advance that could be helpful to their case. But in any case, the subpoena calls for Ralph Vecchio to appear in person, and Mr. Vecchio explained that he was not the owner of the dealership when the Kohbergers bought that white Elantra. His father was. His father is now 88 and homeward bound. So the judge decided to grant the defense a continuance to see if the current Ralph Vecchio III, who now owns the dealership, if he is in a situation where he could access the records of sale and could testify about selling this car to the Kohbergers. And so that decision about whether to, so far it's still considered a valid subpoena. However, the defense wanted to question Ann Taylor, Kohberger's defense attorney, to see if having Ralph Vecchio appear in person would be okay with her instead of having the senior Ralph Vecchio, who is homeward bound.
So many moving parts in this trial that you're going to be able to watch right here on Court TV, rapidly approaching the end of summer.
August.
Jury selection begins in August, and we will be there. Grace Wong, Senior Director of Courtroom Coverage for Court TV, thank you so much for that update.